Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're putting on our scrubs and performing a corporate autopsy on one of the most spectacular, mind-boggling failures in wearable tech history, the total collapse of Jawbone. If you follow tech strategy at all, you know this is a massive case study. I mean, how does a company with all the money, all the brand recognition, and all the cultural hype just die? Well, let's break open this hardware postmortem and find out exactly what went wrong.
Okay, let's start by looking at this absolutely massive number, $900 million. That is the staggering amount of funding Jawbone raised, only to watch it literally evaporate into liquidation. Just think about that for a second. We're talking nearly $1 billion in venture capital? Poof, entirely wiped out. How on earth does a company burn through that much runway and end up with absolutely nothing to show for it?
To figure that out, we're going to systematically dissect this collapse through 5 phases. We'll look at the unicorn that vanished, design over durability, the squeezed middle trap, the missed data pivot, and wrap it up with the final lesson.
All right, part 1, the unicorn that vanished. From king of cool to liquidation. Let's establish just how high they were actually flying before the crash.
At its absolute peak, Jawbone wasn't just a successful company, it was a massive unicorn with a sky-high valuation of $3 billion. They were widely hailed as the undisputed king of cool in the wearables market. Wearing a Jawbone device, that was a serious flex. It signaled you were part of this elite, in-the-know tech crowd. You had celebrities, top-tier athletes, and Silicon Valley insiders all sporting these things. They captured that elusive social cachet that most brands literally spend decades trying to manufacture.
But here's the wild part. Despite a $900 million war chest and all that undeniable social clout, they completely vanished. They didn't just downsize, or get quietly scooped up by a bigger player for a fraction of the cost. No, they went into total liquidation. All that cash simply couldn't save them from the massive structural flaws lurking right under the surface.
Which brings us to part 2, design over durability, when beautiful tech fails. This is where we see their first fatal flaw.
Jawbone was absolutely obsessed with sleek aesthetics. They wanted to create modern jewelry, not just clunky tech gadgets. And they did. But the external reality was brutal. The devices were plagued by massive hardware failures. And we're not talking about glitchy software or a battery draining too fast. The U-bands were notoriously vulnerable to basic water damage and would, quite literally, snap in half and fall apart right on consumers' wrists.
Here's the thing. You simply cannot maintain a massive tech brand when the physical product completely fails to do the one basic thing it was designed to do. A focus on aesthetics over basic functionality, that's just a ticking time bomb. It really doesn't matter how incredible your device looks in a glossy magazine spread if your most loyal early adopters are returning it 3 weeks later because the band broke. Reliability has to be the foundation of everything.
So let's move to part 3, and this is absolutely critical for understanding their demise. The squeezed middle trap. Nowhere to move.
We really need to focus on this concept, the squeezed middle trap. It's essentially a strategic dead zone. Imagine a vice. On one side, you've got a dominant budget competitor cranking out tremendous value for the lowest possible price. On the other side, you've got a premium luxury competitor offering the absolute best features and status, charging top dollar. If your company is sitting right there in the middle, you have zero distinct value proposition. You aren't the cheapest option, and you aren't the best option. You just become invisible.
And man, Jawbone was utterly sandwiched between 2 untouchable giants here. On the left, Fitbit aggressively locked down the affordable, reliable market. They were cheap, they were accessible, and they worked. On the right, Apple launched the Apple Watch and instantly dominated the premium luxury smartwatch ecosystem. So there's Jawbone, trapped right in the middle, completely boxed in from both sides with absolutely nowhere to move.
So put yourself in the shoes of a consumer. You walk into a store, you're looking at a shelf, and you ask yourself, why should I buy a Jawbone over a super cheap Fitbit or a really premium Apple Watch? Jawbone had absolutely no answer to that question. Without a distinct competitive advantage in either price or premium functionality, they completely lost their reason to exist in the minds of buyers. That takes us to part 4, the missed data pivot, staying hardware in a software world.
Okay, so if you're trapped in that squeeze middle and you actively know your hardware is literally breaking on people's wrists, you have to ask the obvious question. Why on earth didn't they fundamentally change their business model? Why didn't Jawbone pivot to save themselves?
Well, while their rivals were rapidly expanding into these massive, sticky software ecosystems, Jawbone just stayed completely stagnant.
Think about it. The entire tech world was shifting toward data-driven insights. Competitors were taking all those recorded steps and heartbeats and turning them into incredibly valuable, actionable health software. But Jawbone? They stubbornly remained a pure hardware company. They were obsessed with selling beautiful plastic bands in a world that had already moved on to monetizing data and software services. They missed the pivot entirely.
Which brings us to the end of our autopsy. Part 5. The final lesson. The core takeaway. It all really boils down to this one simple truth. A great brand cannot hide a broken product. It's just that simple. All those cool aesthetics, the crazy $3 billion unicorn valuations, the endless Silicon Valley hype, it literally means absolutely nothing if your foundational product is fundamentally cracked. Jawbone is the ultimate proof that you can't market your way out of devices falling apart, and you definitely can't brand your way out of the squeezed middle trap.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to kind of analyze the market around you today. Take a hard look at the current tech landscape. Who else out there is lacking a clear why? Who isn't the cheapest, but also definitely isn't the most premium? Ask yourself, what other current tech companies might be falling right into the squeezed middle trap today? Keep an eye out for who might be the next unicorn to vanish, and I'll see you in the next explainer.